miners collect the transactions into the blocks and users verify the blocks are actually valid. This is important for making sure that the miner doesn't put a transaction in that spends coins that don't exist, creates inflation out of nowhere, steals someone else's bitcoins. If the users don't verify this, then miners can do basically anything. Because the users do this, 51% attacks are limited in what they're able to do. They can only do a reorg, which is undoing transactions that the miner themselves sent. Any other transactions can be reconfirmed as long as the sender isn't malicious as well. So if there's no users actually verifying this, not only can the miners do this, but it's also essentially incentivizing them to do it, because why not? If we wanted to trust someone, a centralized issuer, we could just be using a fiat currency. We don't need proof of work or miners or any of this. So now the question is, how many full nodes are actually needed? Obviously, miners could be running the full nodes, but that doesn't really protect the network at all. They can just modify the protocol rules on their full node to do whatever they feel like mining. If you alone don't run a full node, that puts you at risk. If the miners were to do something, then you might exceed their invalid block causing inflation as valid. You might accept their transaction with inflation. But it really wouldn't hurt anyone but yourself. It would hurt you, because then all of a sudden you're using a currency that nobody else is, and nobody's going to take your payment. But what if most people don't run a full node? Then at that point, there's economic pressure for the invalid chain in this event. If the minority are running a full node, their coins aren't going to be accepted by the majority who are not. And at that point, we have a currency that the miners control, essentially replacing Bitcoin. So we need at least a majority that are, in fact, using their own full node to ensure that the miners cannot create inflation or break any of these other rules that we just assume are Bitcoin's rules. And what happens if all of the, we have a majority of full nodes, but they're all in the US, and then the US goes to sleep in the middle of the night? The rest of the world is going to continue doing commerce during the day. That gives time for the miners to potentially cause inflation overnight, and then the US wakes up and can't interact with the rest of the world. So for that reason, we need not just a majority, not just a simple supermajority either. We need to have a sufficient majority such that the whole world is covered. There's a majority all the time, not just one part of the day or another part of the day. And so for that reason, I usually estimate this to be around 85% of people using Bitcoin. Not necessarily the people, but the economic activity, people buying and selling, how much they're buying and selling during the day.